Right. Morning, everyone. Does anyone not know who I am?
Hey, Jason.
What lighting do you want, Jason?
If you can, as long as you can see the TV, it's good. All right. I'll try to speak up too. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. Welcome, guys. So I go to the church, but I don't often come to the men's group. I apologize for that. I feel bad with all the amount of things I have going on in my life. I just can't do everything. So.
Can't. We do. Welcome.
Thank you. All right. Today we're talking about something that I wish I had known when I was a young man. And that is the 6 stages of a man's life. This is a book called Fathered by God by John Eldredge. He's a guy who wrote Wild at Heart. I didn't read this book till I was probably about 40. And it made a lot of sense. So I'm going to start with a Bible verse. Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it. And you will find rest for your souls. There are ancient paths that exist. As men, we have a pretty innate love for maps and trails, don't we? And not knowing where they go. But there is a way to go. So masculinity is a journey. No one automatically becomes a man just by aging, right? There are a lot of adult boys around. Masculinity is a journey. It's one that must be experienced. It's not a spectator sport. You can't watch it from the sidelines. And if any of us are going to undergo a successful journey, it requires a map. And there is a map for the masculine journey. Too many of us feel like we're left to figure things out on our own, and it doesn't have to be that way. And we are image bearers of God, and you'll see that come through as we talk about the stages. And the stages are these: son, cowboy, warrior, lover, king, and sage. So we're going to talk about each one of these. By the way, feel like we'll do a question time at the end, but if you have a question, this is informal, please. Okay, don't treat this like I'm up here preaching a sermon. Okay, feel free to ask a question. So we're going to start out with the first one, son. What do you remember most about your boyhood? Just shout out something.
Riding a bike.
Okay. Anyone else?
Baseball.
Baseball. Good.
Doing a lot of dumb stuff.
Share more.
God designed boys to be the way they are. And it's a shame that our schools try to medicate, and life in our American culture in general doesn't value boys and masculinity. But boys are designed by God to be the way they are. But the stage of the son is supposed to be a time of joy, a time of safety, a time of security, a time of affirmation. Boys need to know that they are loved by their father, that he delights in them, that he is prized. It's more than just a son, it's a beloved son. And that's we're going to come back to that a little bit later. But the next stage is the cowboy. So this is the stage where a boy learns adventure and hard work. Both of those things are important. And this starts, there aren't like exact ages for all of these, but this is roughly 13 is when it starts. And who does the boy learn adventure and hard work from? Should be his father. Not everybody gets that. We'll talk about that a little bit too. But you'll see, I've seen it in both of my boys. They long to start testing themselves. In the book Wild at Heart, John Eldridge says this, that every man has a question. And that question is, do I have what it takes? And then in this stage, this is where he learns it. And it's more than just learning it, it's knowing it. It's getting an answer to that question. And this is the foundational question of a man. And a boy learns his answer to that question through those things, through adventure, through hard work. I get it. I know, I have what it takes. It's also time separating from a mother, because a mother can't answer that question for a boy. Only a father can, or a father figure. Anytime I say father, it could be father or father figure. All right, moving on to the next stage, warrior. So this is when a man learns to fight. Now it's often physically, but because a man needs to know that he's strong, but it's also spiritually. It's a time of taking up a cause and serving a king. Now that means submitting to authority. What would a warrior be without a king? What would you call that?
Barbarian.
Yeah, mercenary. Yeah, something like that, right? They're rogue. Yep. At this stage is when a young man learns the rigors of discipline. Boys tend to take the path of least resistance, and that's normal at that age. But as you move through these stages, you can't take the path of least resistance anymore. You have to go the hard way. You have to engage. You have to decide. This is the stage where the young man learns that he's strong, that he has what it takes. Well, we learned that in the last stage, but he learns he's strong. He is able to encounter evil face to face and defeat it, and he embraces risk. The next stage, lover. Now this isn't just loving a woman, although woman is part of this, but it's learning to appreciate and to be moved by beauty. And women, of course, are included in that, but it's not just women. It's nature, it's poetry, it's art, music, literature, and God, too. It's a time of intimacy with God, like learning that God is beautiful, and that to enjoy Him and His creation and everything about Him. As far as women goes, though, in this stage, what most men get wrong is they look to the woman for strength. But that's not how this is supposed to work. A lover offers his strength to a woman. He doesn't seek to find it from her. Stage 5 is king. At this stage, a man is given a kingdom. It's a domain to rule. It's your work. It's your family. It's your home. It's your land. That's your domain. And a man is in the king stage is given authority. He's ruling with authority. What is the purpose of authority? Does anyone know? Purpose. What's the purpose of authority? Sorry, Chuck.
To keep things under control.
Give order.
Yeah.
Lead effectively.
Leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. So those of you who Shane Holden, he said this often. Authority is only ever given to serve. You're not wrong about those other things, but that's the purpose of authority is to serve. And the other stages prepare a king for this. And it's not just about your years of experience, it's about your heart as well. A king gathers warriors around him to protect and rule his domain. It's also a tremendous test of character. The Bible is full of examples of failed kings. Adam, how did Adam fail? It's an easy one. Right, yep. Yeah. He chose Eve over God. That's how Adam failed. Gideon, you guys remember him? There are great stories about these guys, but if you read the whole story, they don't end well. Gideon served other gods at the end. Saul, of course, terrible king. David was a great king, but he also messed up, you know. Solomon too. The Bible goes on and on about how great Solomon was, but if you read the story to the end, he was what is 700 concubines or something like that. He was occupied elsewhere.
He was stuck in stage 4.
There's some pretty good examples though too. Moses, he didn't have a great failing at the end of his reign. Josiah is probably not one you've heard of. It's in Chronicles and Kings, but it's a great story. He was made king as a young man, and Israel had completely forgotten the law, and they were like fixing up the temple and found the scrolls, and he was like, oh my God, we're not doing any of this stuff that God has commanded us to do. And he reforms the kingdom to start following God again. And of course, Jesus himself, never failed. So a king can do either great good or great damage. And those of you who've worked under bad leaders, I'm sure know about that. You know, you may wonder, like, is it really fair to call us kings? Well, in Genesis, God says to Adam and Eve, God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. And that's Adam failed, but Jesus succeeded where Adam failed. And also in Luke, Jesus said, and I confer on you a kingdom, just as my Father conferred one on me, so that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom and sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. So what makes a good king? Well, the question to ask is, what is life like for the people in his kingdom? Right? The people who are under his authority, what are they like? Do they feel like they're on their own, desperate to prove themselves, or do they feel safe and protected? For any man, what is his family like? How happy is his wife? How are his children? A good king brings order, protection, and blessing. A good king asks, what good can I do for others today with the power and wealth that I have? And it's about the heart. Proverbs 21:1 says, the king's heart is in the hands of the Lord. He directs it like a water course wherever he pleases. A king isn't just, this is king, we are kings with a little k, right? Because Jesus is king, right? But he has delegated some of his authority to us. And we are little kings with a little k. But we have to be submitted to God. And the last step is sage.
It's Chuck.
Sage is a time of wisdom and humility.
Yeah, Chuck needs to work on the humility. I'm here for you, Chuck.
He says
This is a time in a man's life where his kingdom shrinks, but his influence increases. A sage mentors kings. And you see it in fiction all the time. Arthur had Merlin. Aragorn had Gandalf, right? And unfortunately, there's way more of these in the fictional space than there are in real life. This is not a time to check out and retire. The heart of a sage is to make his greatest contribution with the last years of his life. A sage is a friend of God, and it represents a life lived long with God. And to be honest, most don't get to this stage, right? This is actually pretty rare stage. And you don't, by the way, like someone doesn't have to be living to be a sage. Like you could read an old book from somebody who's long gone, but their wisdom still can shine through. But as for those of you older guys here, we kings need you. We need our sages. So please don't retire and check out on us. So just a few more, we're going to kind of go out, now that we've reviewed the stages, I'm just going to go off a little bit on some other things. So these stages overlap. It's not like clear, cut and dried. You're in this stage and then you're in this stage and this stage. There's, but a cowboy is going to have some warrior experiences. Even a beloved son is going to have some experiences. And sometimes they happen out of order. I'll talk about that in a little bit when I kind of tell my story. And you aren't guaranteed to get every stage, but that's why we're talking about this, so that if you miss one, God will be faithful to help you through it. And at every stage, like the king is also still a beloved son. A king is also still a cowboy. He's still a lover. He's still a warrior. So at every stage, you retain and can call upon those earlier stages. So here's some examples. So Moses, let's use him as an example. Bible doesn't tell us much about his early life, but we do know that his parents loved him enough to send him downriver to try to escape him being killed by the Egyptians. But we also knew that he was adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, and so he grew up in Pharaoh's household. And I'm sure he was doted upon there. So cowboy, though, and these you can see that these happened out of order, because if you know the story, Moses killed an Egyptian first, then he was banished and fled to the desert where he became a shepherd. So Moses became the warrior first before he became the cowboy. We don't know much about the lover stage for Moses, but we do know that he loved God. King, of course, he's a leader of Israel, and then in his later years he was the judge of Israel.
Jason.
Yeah, right.
Did Moses, I don't know the Bible very good, did he have kids?
I think he did, but I think they're just only referenced in passing, like once. I don't think he was married though. Yeah.
Huh? He did?
Because his sister was jealous, like she didn't like he married like a foreign wife, like a Moabite or something like that. His sister was jealous. There was something about that. Yeah. King David. So we don't know anything about his younger years. He was the youngest child, though, which probably means he was loved.
Did you look over there?
I did. David was also a shepherd, right? And that was his cowboy time. And he talks about having killed lions that were tried to attack his sheep. Being a shepherd is no joke. Like, if you really understand how that, like, it's not like just this peaceful scene where you just relaxing while the sheep eat. Like, no, you're on high alert. You have to retrieve them if they run off. You have to protect them from danger. Warrior, of course, David killed Goliath. Lover, I mean, obviously David was a lover of women for sure. But if you read the Psalms, though, you know that he poured out his heart to God. He was absolutely in love with God. And of course, he was the literal king of Israel. Doesn't seem like he really made it to the sage point much. He did a lot of preparation for the temple, which Solomon was to build before him, but yeah, so anyway, just some examples there.
Good.
So what could go wrong with these stages? What could go wrong? And it does go wrong. So there's woundedness that happens, that can happen, and does happen in every stage. For a son, it's fatherlessness, right? How does a boy feel like a beloved son if he doesn't have a father? For a cowboy, it's being too sheltered, not being able to experience adventure, not being taught how to work hard. This is the stage where the question gets answered. Do I have what it takes? It's not getting that question answered. For a warrior, it's emasculation. It's not being. It's our society does not value warriors in general until we need them. But also the warriors are wounded when they won't fight, being passive. In the lover stage, it's almost all of us have been rejected by a woman at some point, I'm assuming, right? And that it hurts, and we can't let that say, I won't open my heart up. We can't skip being a lover due to rejection. Lover can also, I don't have this on here, but if a man becomes a lover too early, that's a wounding, because you're not ready for it. And then I also mentioned this earlier, taking the question to Eve. Women can't answer that question, do I have what it takes for you? She just can't. For a king, it's missing a stage. What is a king like who was never a beloved son? Right? What is a king like who was never a cowboy? What was a king like who was never a warrior? A king who was never a lover. And kings also are wounded by refusing to lead. Yeah.
That part about the warrior and the king, like I think of our presidents, Jason.
Sure.
Justin and Jacob, I know right off the bat
Right.
serve, and I appreciate that, we all do. But I think about that, I didn't serve, and then I think these guys when did the last president we had that put on the uniform for our country?
Right.
And that's what you're, right? I'm
Right.
sure, Lynn.
Right. Yeah. 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 There's other ways to learn to fight, but that's a classic one. Yeah. And then for the sage, a sage is wounded when they're dismissed, when no one wants to hear what they have to say. So let me ask you this: which stage do you think is the most crucial? Take a guess.
The sun.
Who said that?
The sun.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. Anyone else agree? Yeah. That's the one. That's the foundational one. And how was it attacked by the enemy? Because it is attacked by the enemy.
You can look at the rate of single parent families.
Right. Yeah.
That keeps going up, mental illness keeps going up, and you
Yeah.
go, how is this happening?
Right.
Have the answer.
And how does a boy get through these stages without a father? Right.
Jason, I think another way is if they do have a father, but he's wounded in some way,
Right. Yeah.
he can't lead.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how to show that love to his son because he was never taught that himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the enemy kind of works through.
I have to add to what he just said. In my own personal experience, I grew up mostly fatherless, and seeing my friends around me with fathers that were terrible examples, I was stuck for the longest time growing up, realizing that in some cases it was better to be fatherless than to be fathered. If that's the kind of fathering I would have gotten from what I saw my friends get.
Sure.
So that really can mess with your head growing up. Like, you have no option, you know?
Yeah.
I'm stuck either preferring no father, because I definitely don't want that father. And you have no other examples to pick from. So,
Yep, yep, that's good.
Isn't a young man, doesn't he have his radar out for a father figure then?
Absolutely,
Or does
absolutely.
he just wander without,
It's,
it's like an impulse, right?
yeah, it depends. I think,
Inborn.
yep, some seek it out, but then it doesn't take too many rejections, you know, to shut that down and for a boy to stop asking. And when I say, to Jacob's point, when I say fatherlessness, you could have a father and still be fatherless, right? It's a state of being. It's not whether there's where you actually have a father in your house or not. Yeah.
I'll give you an example. As part of one chapter of my life, I was a Cub Scout, leader.
Yeah.
And so we had, every month we have a weekly or a monthly meeting with all the Cub Scouts, all the, the little, people would come in. And of course, you have all these little boys, these young boys, And you can see in a group of, maybe we had about 30 or 40 boys that were in the Cub Scouts, but there was a small group of boys that were in there. You could tell they were clamoring for a match, of somebody. They clamored to me as a father. I mean, they would just love on me, even to the point where I spent several nights waiting after the Cub Scout meeting because nobody came to pick these kids up. And I'd sit by the curb with them, waiting for the mother, to show up. And sometimes they would be very late. They'd come and they'd be with their friends and they'd be drinking and whatever, carrying out. I could see where these young boys had a terrible home life, and they were just crying out for some love and somebody to pay attention to them and looking for a fatherly figure. So that's real.
Yeah. Yeah. The enemy's one central purpose is to separate us from the Father. And fatherlessness is a super effective way to do that. Because if you grow up fatherless, you will struggle to see God as a father. So, yeah, that's so.
I think you struggle to see God at all.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So
I
that.
have a friend of mine right now who just recently said, I really want to believe in God, I just don't. And so I told her, I said, God will take the want to. He sees that.
Sure. Yeah. But to me, that's why this stage is the most crucial. It's because if Satan can sabotage it, then you're on a path that it can be hard to recover from. So I want to share a little bit about my story. I grew up as a beloved son. Grew up in northern Wisconsin on a farm. My dad enjoyed me. Maybe not to the extent I would have wished, but it was. I had a pretty good. Nobody gets a perfect sonhood, but I had a pretty good one. And then I kind of missed some stuff. I learned how to work, but I missed out on. And I had sort of some of my own adventures. Like I said, I grew up on a farm. I loved exploring the property I grew up on. But I was a very tentative kid and didn't really seek adventure. And I completely missed the warrior stage. I never, and I think my dad probably did too. I never learned how to fight. I didn't get my question answered. And I don't blame my dad for that. He didn't know. And that's why I talk about this stuff as much as I can, because when you know, then you know better, then you can do better. So I had a little bit of the cowboy, completely missed the warrior, and then I met the woman who's going to become my wife, Rebecca, and I was not I wasn't the man I should have been, I could have been for her at that time in my life, because I was tentative. I didn't know how to fight. I didn't know that I had what it takes. I didn't know I was strong. Thank God that she saw the potential in me, even when I didn't see it myself. So then, we get married. I start having kids. I start growing in my career, and I'm a king, but I'm not ready to be a king. So, yeah, well, I think I talk about that on the next slide. Obviously, I don't think I'm at the sage level yet, so I can't talk about that. But so here's how God taught me how to fight. It was through Wild at Heart, that book by John Eldredge. And this is a quote from the book. When we enter the story in Genesis, we step into a world at war. The lines have already been drawn. Evil is waiting to make its next move. Somewhere back before Eden, in the mystery of eternity past, there was a coup, a rebellion, an assassination attempt. Lucifer, the prince of angels, the captain of the guard, rebelled against the Trinity. He tried to take the throne of heaven by force, assisted by a third of the angelic army, in whom he instilled his own malice. They failed and were hurled from the presence of the Trinity. But they were not destroyed, and the battle is not over. God now has an enemy, and so do we. Man was not born into a sitcom or a soap opera. He is born into a world at war. This is not Home Improvement. It is Saving Private Ryan. So that awakened the warrior in me. It was more of a spiritual thing than a physical thing, but and this is the verse that this is based on. Then war broke out in heaven. This is from Revelation. War broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. So that's kind of my story. I didn't talk about, let me go back here. So, king, what was I going to say about that? Yeah, so I'm in what should be the king stage of life, and I'm not ready for it. God was faithful to father me in that, and I asked him to. He was faithful to teach me how to fight and answer my question. And since then, I've been able to be the king that I should have been and am. So that's my story. That's the stages. Any questions or anything we want to talk about?
Jason?
Yeah, go for it.
Just a couple thoughts.
Yeah.
I know we didn't really talk about the sage thing. And I don't think I'm quite there yet. But the influence a grandfather can have on a grandson.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
I mean, I think I had a great childhood, good relationship with my dad, but I learned different things from my grandfather.
Sure.
I mean, he passed away in his 90s, an old farmer, and just a lot of things about attitude in life and can do, and things I would see him do. So I think those of us who are grandfathers or soon to be, don't overlook that role and that influence you can have on your grandson's life. And I didn't realize that until I was older. Just, I would listen to my grandfather talk and see him do things. In his 90s, just still climbing over fences to go do stuff on the farm. And my mom get mad at him, and he'd look at me and go, "Oh, it's not so bad. It's just a little harder to climb over the fence than I was your age." But the influence a grandfather can have on a son, I think, on a grandson is just very powerful, and sometimes we overlook that role.
Yeah, excellent.
I kind of I'm going to talk about the sage myself a little bit, because so in theory, I have the kids at home and I'm king.
Yep.
I'm not picking on Phil in particular, but I actually think there's a lot of older kings who don't want to become the sage because they basically don't want the label of being old.
Sure.
And I bring this up in particular, like, so I'm closer with my father-in-law than my own father. We won't get into that story today. But I feel like my father-in-law doesn't want to take that step to sage them, and we bump heads because we're two kings in the same area, and it's one of those things of just like I wish anyways that like he would just accept like I want your knowledge, I want your wisdom, but let me make the decision, let me like call the shot. And I see that a lot when you were going through them. I think the reason not all reach this stage is because I think, picking on all of you gray hairs in here, I'll hide my gray hair right now, but like they're just too stubborn to give up their kingdom. They're like, no, this is my kingdom, I want it. And they don't want to be like, you know what, it's time to pass the torch.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not trying to like...
No, you're right, you're absolutely...
It's my warrior stage here, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There are kings who don't give it up when they should. Yeah, right.
Justin, but you gotta have somebody ready to pluck the butterfly from the master's palm too. Let's do it.
All right, you go get a butterfly right.
So, my stage in my life, about 2 years ago, came to me and let me know that he was going to be soft retiring. He's a pastor. And what I found is it's really important for those of us who are underneath a sage, as you said earlier, if there's a sage in this room, don't undervalue yourself. But if you are somebody who is seeking a sage, make sure the sages you're seeking are being valued, like even verbally. And that's what I did with this soft retiring pastor. I said, look, I understand that, but we're not done here, you and I. We need to keep this going. And so since he's done that, we meet once a month for breakfast.
Great.
And it's a date on my calendar that you cannot move. So, and he knows that. He knows what he means to me in my life and what those times mean. In fact, I just did that yesterday with him. So it's just, and every time I meet with him, there's always something more coming from him that I can take with me and ponder for the next month and pray over and take to God and say, okay, is this in me? And if not, why not? And if it is in me, how can it be brought out more? So yeah, sages need to know their value. Otherwise, they will check out.
Right.
I don't know you, Jeb, but you're a wise king.
If only you knew. That's just it. You don't know.
I think one of the things that you need to think about, and especially gray hairs that are supposedly in the slave area, sometimes you're a sage, sometimes you're still king.
Sure.
Depending on who you're dealing with and what's going on.
Yep.
And that's always difficult.
Yeah.
Because you're doing 2 or 3 different things depending on who you're dealing with. But I think, you're not ever one category.
Yeah.
There's several categories.
Sure.
And I think, Justin, you're right. Kings are really, it's a difficult transition to go into that sage category. And sometimes it's easier than other times. But again, it gets back to where's the person they're dealing with at? If they're the warrior or something else, or maybe they're just a kid yet, there's a reason why they wanted to be the king, because the person hasn't matured enough.
Yeah.
And there's an awful lot of that out there.
Yep.
And from our standpoint, and we don't know how to work with that because those people have not grown up yet. So maybe that's to some extent why you still see that king supposedly. But then again, it all depends on the individuals and so forth. But yeah, it's difficult when you're a sage over here and a king over here and you're somebody else over there.
Yeah.
Trying to be the same.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, yeah, one of the things I think about too, so like, just because I was reading the email the other day from Pastor Sean about Christmas, like at what point as a father do you make your own Christmas traditions and you go like, we're not going to go to the parents' house anymore?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Like,
Sooner than later.
but it's like I will say, like we like this year is my intent is this year will be the first year that we, and junior's 10, and like I'm finally gonna be like, I think we're just gonna do our own thing for Christmas.
Yeah.
Because
Now
you want your own
battle.
What's that?
Now we got a battle.
Yeah.
Yeah, now the king has to call on the warrior, right?
But it is just fascinating though, because trying to figure out when you start transitioning.
Yep,
Yep.
yep.
That's a good point. That makes me think
good.
about Justin, my daughter, married the guy, and I said, Kelly, I'm gonna get emotional again. That's your family unit. You and them are 2 grandkids. You guys are, he's the protector, and you make it a home, and all that stuff like that. And we're additions to it. It's like, you know what I mean? You do stuff at a wedding. What's the bride's day? The flowers, the singer, the baker, we're all just making her day be special, right? And that's the way grandparents' role should be. But what you said, Dwayne, too, is we all wear so many different hats for different places, you know? My wife wants a friend to talk to. Well, get your girlfriends, and I don't talk enough, you know?
You don't talk enough, right?
Well, but they all got different things. That's a perfect way to say it.
The other thing too is, you know, as a king, I mean, kings don't always make the right decisions
Right.
and stuff. What you need is you need an accountability partner, no matter what stage you're going through in all of this, so that you have somebody who's a sounding board that you can talk. And I mean, certainly you only want a Christian person who can give you God's perspective.
Yeah.
But even a king, you know, studies, and if you're not in the Word of God and you have an accountability partner where you could talk, you know, where if you're doing something, he goes, no, you're not doing that anymore, then you never will reach sage.
Yep. One of the things
You gotta do it.
one of the things you see in the life of David is he, in his younger years, he would inquire of the Lord before every decision he made, which is what a king should do. A king, you're absolutely supposed to make decisions as a king. Like, you can't shy away from it. But you can ask God before you make every decision. But you see him later in life, he's not asking anymore.
But I also like what he was saying too, you know, you go to people, and it ties in with what you said earlier when you asked about what is the purpose of authority, and you bounced off of Shane saying that it's to serve. So in this room, if you're a king, the best way to know how well you're doing as a king is to ask your subjects.
Yeah.
How well do you feel served by my authority? And be humble enough to receive their answers and really let God take that apart and search your heart as David asked of God. And then be honest with yourself and say, okay, they have valid points here. You know, I need to make a shift.
Yeah.
Help me do that, Lord. How? Send someone to show me how.
Over the years, I've asked my kids, I've asked my wife,
Yeah.
is there anything you wish I did more of that I don't do? And is there something I do that you wish I'd stop doing? You know?
Hey, Jason, can you put those stages back up there again?
Yeah.
Just comment on that. So when you look at these, just the different things you learn at each level, like a son, humility, cowboy, adventure, warrior, strength, lover to be that little softer side, and then king, ruling. And so by the time you get to sage, you should have like this 360-degree, well-rounded leadership thing. And the dichotomy in some of those, just between warrior and lover, sometimes, and you look at some of our professions out there, I'll just take like a police force, you know, you're asking some young men and women out there on the front lines of our society, one minute they have to be aware and stand up and defend, and the next minute they have to be that lover to counsel and console. And sometimes in our everyday lives, those are some huge mental mind shifts that we have to take. And there's some maturity that has to happen to be able to do that. You know, it is easy to criticize someone on the front lines out there for making a bad decision, but some of those young soldiers and policemen are making life and death decisions in milliseconds. And we, in our own lives, might not be there, but sometimes in your family, you're having to make some very big decisions, sometimes in short amount of times, you know, your son's doing something stupid, if he's in trouble, how do you know, do you stand up for him one moment and then counsel him when you get home? And I think that ties into what Chuck said a bit ago. Sometimes you need that accountability partner to bounce these ideas off of and to learn how to handle some of these situations. I wouldn't discount that at all.
Yeah, I think you just have to be careful who that accountability partner is.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So back to
I didn't say they Chuck your company.
right. No, right. Yeah, I totally get it.
And Dwayne and I are not.
Yeah. So if you remember the story of David, his son Absalom did a coup, right? Absalom kicked David out, made himself king, and he said. So people came to him then and said, or was it Solomon? No, it was, sorry, I'm mixing up. When Solomon died, his son became king. And the people came to him and said that your taxes are crushing us. Like, we need some help. And who did he, I forget his name, but he went to, not the sage, but the other warriors. The young guys who said, you know, I don't know, something about my father was a little finger and I'm as big as his weight. I don't know. He was like self-inflated his own sense of self, and basically said, "I'm gonna tax you more than my father did." So he didn't pick a very good accountability partner.
So Jason, I just wanted to say one thing back to his comment about the 360. It's true. By the time you get to the sage, you should have a 360 view. And I was just telling my mentoring pastor yesterday that if there's anybody here that feels a little impatient about this process, don't be. Because I was at an event a couple weeks ago, and something someone said during that event really stuck with me, and that was, stories take time. These stages are all part of our stories.
Mm-hmm.
And even the headline says, my story.
Yep.
So if you're in a hurry to get from one stage to another, take a breath, slow down, relax, be patient and kind to yourself, and let the Lord lead.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I completely agree with you, Jeb. I think what's more common though is we don't even realize that these stages exist.
Right.
And so therefore we're just floundering and trying to make our own way without trying to rush into one of them. Or we try to do them out of order, right? Rushing into the lover when you haven't been a cowboy or a warrior.
It's interesting because I think I've heard you mention a few times, like people go to the lover stage. I feel like, at least for myself, maybe it's just because I love country music, but I'm always drawn to the cowboy stage because it's just this escape, right? This adventure. I'm gonna go test myself and see if I can take it. But there's very low risk. Well, I understand that actual cowboys have responsibility, but country music cowboys don't have responsibility. They just go out.
Right.
And
A lot of horse.
a lot of whiskey and a lot of horse riding.
Right.
But, you know, I'm very drawn, I think a lot of times, you know, whether it's setting down the crown or whatever and be like, I go pick up the cowboy hat instead, you know, pick up the Stetson instead, because it's just, I find that the most intoxicating of the stages.
Yeah, so in Wild at Heart, John Eldridge talks about so there's the quest, every man has a question, but there's 3 things that God put in the heart of a man. That is an adventure to live, a battle to fight, and a beauty to rescue. Those are inherent in every man. Yeah. So that's so even if you're a different stage, that desire for adventure, hopefully never leaves you as a man. Yeah.
And if you're a young guy or even an old guy, if you haven't read that book by John Eldridge, Wild at Heart,
Yeah.
I encourage you to read it. It's an awesome book.
That's what Jerry just said too, Phil.
So I'm going to wrap up with this. So I want you all to be confident in this, okay? You are the son of a kind, strong, and engaged father, a father wise enough to guide you in the way, generous enough to provide for your journey, offering to walk with you every step. Regardless of your earthly father, let's set him aside. He did the best he could. God will make up the difference. And I also want to give a plug for Cross Council. We talked about wounding, the different woundings that can happen in every stage. You're not gonna heal on your own. As guys, we just walk around and with scars that are they're wounds that are just unhealed. If you want to be everything you can be in the stage you're in, you have to get some healing. And I know of no better way to get it than from Cross Council. So please come to this orientation. I believe in this so much, I'm learning how to do it with Steve. So
I will second that because I've seen some miraculous work through Cross Council with
yeah,
my daughter.
yeah, good.
So.
Yeah, but yeah, don't just please get healing from where you were wounded. And everyone's wounded. Nobody is unwounded. You just can't escape it in this broken world.
I'm gonna just also too let you know that knowing Steve and having been through that with him as well, don't make excuses for yourself. I don't have the time, I don't have the resources, you know. Steve will take those excuses away from you.
And lastly, so I'm not gonna, depending on time, I was maybe gonna do this. I'll have Tim Oz send this link out. There's a YouTube video called The Father's Love Letter, which is it's someone just reading all of these scriptures. I'll just give you, it's like 10 minutes, so I'm not gonna watch the whole thing, but let me just play you a minute of it. So for those of you who don't feel like if you feel like you missed the beloved son stage, well, I don't know. I don't seem to have audio, so I don't know if I can play it. Okay, we'll skip it. I'll send out the link. Oh, there it goes.
The words you are about to experience are true. They will change your life if you let them. For they come from the very heart of God. He loves you. And He is the Father you have been looking for all your life. This is His love letter to you. My child, you may not know me, but I know everything about you. I know when you sit down and when you rise up. I am familiar with all your ways. Even the very hairs on your head are numbered. For you were made in my image. In me you live and move and have your being.
I'm going to stop it there. But if that resonated with you, that I didn't get what I needed in that beloved son stage, please watch this video.
We can Google that, Jason?
I'll have Tim send the link out. Yeah. So yeah, let me close by praying for you guys. Father, thank you that you are a good father. You're the best father. And we all need something from you. And I pray that every man and young man here today learn something, God, would you speak to each one of us? A good father is not silent. So, God, tell us what do we need? What did we miss in our masculine journey? What do we need? So that we can start looking to find it instead of working around it. Thankful for the ways you have been faithful to father me and all of us. Thank you that you are able to make up the difference where our earthly fathers, what they weren't able to give us. And we forgive them for not knowing. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.